Hey, it's Dr. Schmidt. So I've been to 5 big seminars this spring, all on nutrition. I love going to seminars, and there were thousands of people in attendance if you put them all together, and dozens of speakers. And I see throughout the field that there are some missing points in ketosis. It's time to update your knowledge on ketosis. I'm going to do that right now for you. So the first one is that regarding the 3 macronutrients, fat, protein, carbs, the only thing that matters to get into ketosis is that your carbohydrates are less than 20 grams a day. It's got to be low. The protein can be high or low. The fat intake can be high or low. Doesn't matter. So that's why people who fast get into ketosis, because their carbohydrate intake is below 20 grams of carbs. For most keto teachers, they say high fat, moderate protein, low carb. That's okay for a short period of time to get into ketosis, because when you lower your carbs down, people want food, they're hungry, they're not used to it, so they can increase their fat up. So they lower the carbs, increase fat. Now 2 weeks go by, 3 weeks go by, now they're in ketosis. Okay, great. Can you sustain that for a long period of time? No, that's the extra added oils and fats that are not appetizing, like avocado oil, coconut oil, olive oil, butter. So I used to have people scooping tablespoons of fat into their mouth, and there are still some doctors that do this. But the point is, it's okay at the beginning to get into ketosis. But once you're in ketosis, you lower the fat intake down. That way you're losing weight. And then your protein can be high. No, protein does not kick you out of ketosis. Protein does not burn like sugar physiologically or clinically. Even I used to say that it does, that it burns like sugar clinically. But I have a patient that's an engineer. He keeps track of his glucose and his ketones. When he eats more protein, the glucose comes up a little bit, but so does his ketones. So his GKI, the glucose ketone index, stays the same. So let me kind of put this together into what's called the unified theory of food. And here's how it goes. There are 3 nutrients that maintain the structure of your body. They maintain your muscles, so you don't get atrophy like a vegan. They maintain your bones, so you don't get osteoporosis. They maintain your brain. And those 3 nutrients are protein, vitamins, and minerals. Now you're left with 2 macronutrients, fat and carbs. So if you lower your carbs down below 20, now you're in ketosis. What do you do with your fat intake? So if you're an endurance athlete, you can have your fat intake very high to give you energy during your marathons. But if you want to lose weight, you lower your fat intake down so that you're burning the fat that you're carrying around instead of the fat that you're eating. So your protein is high, your carbs are low to get into ketosis, and your fat intake is low. Now, if you imagine our ancestors a long time ago, they killed a deer or buffalo and rabbit, and those animal fat percentages were very low. Like a buffalo might be 4% fat, or a rabbit might be 2% fat. So the muscle meat itself is very lean. So then our ancestor hunters would have to go after the fat. They'd have to break the skull or the spine to get to the central nervous system to eat that fat. They'd have to break the long bones, like the femur, for example, to get to the bone marrow. And there was fat in different parts of the animal based on the season. So, for example, fat stores on the back of a buffalo or camel, or, there'd be fat stores, but those fat stores weren't there in the late winter, early spring, so it depended on the season. So the hunters had to go looking for the fat. So if you were to mimic that style of eating, you're eating lean meat, and then there are times when you can eat more fat. Okay, you can cycle this around. But if you've been eating a high carb diet for a long time and you have a lot of weight to lose, there's no need to eat the fat, like from high fat steaks or fatty fish, or add extra butter to your meat, or fat bombs and keto desserts and like bulletproof coffee, butter coffee. All that stuff becomes unnecessary because you're burning the fat that you're carrying around. So let me just reiterate this. So, and I got to get into protein a little bit more here, but high protein, low fat, low carb. Okay, now how much is high protein? So the whole point of doing moderate protein is 2 reasons. Number one, because the idea was that protein kicks you out of ketosis. That's not a true statement. I did a video months ago proving over the course of 12 different research studies on ketosis, the ketone levels in your body only rely on carbohydrates, not fat or protein. The second reason why moderate protein was recommended is because you need to get an autophagy. And when you eat protein, autophagy stops. Autophagy is when your cells die and then you get new cells. It's like a rejuvenation of the body. But the point is, when you eat a pound and a half of meat, like I've been doing for lunch, I'm not hungry for dinner. I go to bed with no food, and there's an 18-hour fast. That's super easy. And I'm getting into autophagy. If you eat tons of calories of junk food, and then you skip a meal, it's so much harder for your body to get into autophagy because the carbs are very high. But if you're eating meat, and then you skip a meal, it's so much easier for your body to get into autophagy because you're eating meat. Okay? So when you, if you were to eat meat 5-6 times a day, there's no autophagy. Now you can do that initially for 2 months if you want, and that'll help get you into ketosis. All right, but then it's not sustainable because you're so full. You have to end up skipping meals. You just can't eat anymore. So that's where autophagy comes in, because now you're skipping meals. Now you're going 15, 12, 20 hours between meals, and your body's recycling itself. And the other fear is that mTOR, which is like insulin for protein, like mTOR is crazy high and it's causing disease, causing cancer, or IGF-1, which is a growth factor, high with protein intake, meat intake, it causes cancer. These are single chemical, individual factors that the body has so many other things it can do to bypass any damage that mTOR or IGF-1 causes. But the point here too is that if you're intermittent fasting, those things come down. So the low carb diet is the foundation of any diet. It's the way of our ancestors. Ketosis is the native state of the body. I've been saying that for 3 years. And but the point of this video is the updates on the information. So how much protein can you have? Well, let's say you want to weigh 160 pounds. Eat 160 grams of protein per day. Now your carbs are less than 20 and your fat can go up or down. If you're thin, you can have more fat. If you're overweight, you bring that fat intake down. So lower fat intake would be 50 to 80 grams of fat. A higher fat intake would be, let's say, 75 to 130 grams of fat. All right, so I'm just talking to a broad audience right now, and I don't know how much you weigh or how much you want to lose, so I can't give you specific advice. Even though I'm talking to you directly, I'm actually talking to a large audience, so I hope you understand where I'm coming from. So don't type in the comment section, how much fat should I be eating, because I don't know the answer to that. So now I've been doing this myself, and I've had many patients do this, and to eat the equivalent grams of your weight in pounds is very healthy. And you have to work to it. You can't just start, like right now I'm at about 180. So if I were to start like with the standard American diet and then try to eat 180 grams of protein in a day, it'd be kind of difficult because your body's got to get used to it. Your intestines have to get used to it. And then you'll have different sleeping patterns. Your body will go through some sort of a cleansing change. And it's kind of radical. You might end up sleeping a lot for the next 2 weeks. Or you might be feeling way more active and wanting to exercise, around that time. It's pretty awesome. So one factor that comes up often is the need for salt for dehydration. So when you eat a high carb, high insulin diet, the insulin's up and it maintains water. People get edema, their fingers swell, their belly swells, their ankles swell, they get high blood pressure. So then you go low carb, whether it's keto, carnivore, whatever, the insulin comes down and then you lose that water. This is when people lower their blood pressure, except if they have mold in their body. But if you don't have any mold, you lose that water, you start urinating excessively. And I've had people urinate, larger quantities for 3 days. And then now their blood pressure is almost normal. So When you urinate more like that, you can lose the potassium, calcium, and magnesium minerals that your muscles use to contract it, or to relax with. And so you can get muscle cramping, you can get constipation, your intestines are all muscle. You can get the keto flu symptoms, just feeling like draggy and tired and brain fog. So you load up on calcium, magnesium, and potassium. You can do calcium powder, magnesium powder, and potassium powder. Don't even bother with potassium capsules or tablets, because by law, those are 99 milligrams, and it's too little. You got to have potassium powder scoop. One scoop might be 1,200 or 2,000 milligrams. So when you add these minerals, now your muscles work better, the cramping goes away. Now you can also do Celtic sea salt or Himalayan, the pink salt. So I'm saying 2 teaspoons a day. And the way that I do it is 1 teaspoon in a shot glass, fill it with water, and then I shoot it. Well, I stir it with a knife, shoot it, chase it down with water. It's like taking hundreds of little supplements. That's how I think of it. And there are people who take 3 teaspoons a day. Now, how much is 2 teaspoons a day? It's about 8.5 grams. Now, there are native tribes around the world that live by the ocean, and they're eating fish and seaweed, and they get 100 grams of salt per day. So don't think that 2 teaspoons is a lot, because it's not. So you want those minerals, you want that density, and you want those symptoms to go away, like such as constipation, keto flu, or muscle cramping. So dehydration from eating a lot of meat, not a big deal. It's easy to fix. Make sure you're drinking extra water. And if that's even too hard, then you might end up having to go back to some salads. If you're trying to go carnivore but you need some salads, I mean, not a big deal. Like iceberg lettuce or something. That's my favorite vegetable. Don't tell anybody I said that. Or even like granola if you need to do like a low carb. There are some low carb granolas on the market as your body's getting used to the change in your diet. The next thing I want to go over, I want to give you some examples. I have a patient now, she's been with me for a year, type 2 diabetic for 25 years, and she was doing the high fat, moderate protein, low carb, testing her blood, glucose, and ketones every single day, writing down her numbers and her weight every single day. And her blood sugar used to spike up to 300. Now it only spikes up to about 130. So her type 2 diabetes is almost cured. I can't say that word though, so I'm going to say helped, in remission, stopped. Now she's still on insulin, so that's the next thing to do, is to start removing the insulin and see what happens with her blood sugar. So she still has some work to do. But a few months ago I told her, okay, I need you to lower the fat down, that way she can lose some weight, raise the protein up, that way she can go more hours between meals. And she goes, oh, thank God you're telling me this, because I didn't know how long I could go with these tablespoons of oil. And she's eating like 6 tablespoons a day. And, you know, it almost basically reversed her type 2 diabetes. We've had 11 people reverse their cancer with this. We've had plenty of people help their heart conditions out, normalize their lipids, et cetera, et cetera. So the high fat, moderate protein, low carb still works, but it's just not as sustainable as doing like higher protein and then low carb, and then moving the fat up and down depending on what your body needs. I want to share with you a story that one of the seminar leaders said at a seminar that I attended this spring. And he's not a keto advocate, but his story is very interesting. This is what he said. There was a panel discussion, so there's a few doctors on stage, and they were talking about a condition. I don't remember what the condition was. And, you know, if a healthcare practitioner is going to talk about a condition, you better talk about a solution, or else you're wasting everybody's time. That's my opinion. So he chimes in on this condition. He said, yes, it mostly happens with women. And I'm thinking, okay, so what's the cure? And he says, and most of the time they're postmenopausal. And I'm thinking, okay, so what? What's the cure? And he says, and usually they have cysts. Okay, so this is all like inconsequential to how to help the person. And then he says, and the luteinizing hormone is usually high. I'm like, okay, you're wasting everybody's time right now just with these facts that are, you know, I consider them not random, but how do you fix it? So then he said this: the woman went on an all-protein diet and everything went away. All the problems went away. And the people who know me, who were sitting around me, turned and they faced me and they looked at me with a smile on their face. And I wanted to jump up, there's like over 100 people in the audience, and say, yeah, the carnivore diet. Now, when he said all protein, that's impossible. It's got to be an all meat diet because meat has protein and fat. So I just thought that was a funny experience because in his limited experience with ketosis and carnivore, this woman found it somewhere online probably and went on it herself and reversed her condition. So one thing that I pushed a lot was cycling ketosis. And do you need to cycle ketosis? Do I change my message on that? Somebody brought this up with me. And when you're eating a carnivore diet, you just eat nothing but meat, you will be in ketosis because it's low carb. So there are plenty of people who eat nothing but meat every day for years. I follow them on Twitter. There's a number of people who do this, and their health is totally fine. So the reason why you would want to cycle ketosis is if you're doing the old school keto way, the high fat, moderate protein, low carb, because it's not sustainable. It's not something that you can do every single day for years. Like I mentioned, the woman who did it for a year, when I told her to cut that fat down, eat more protein, eat more meat, she was so happy. She goes, I didn't know how long I could sustain this for. So if you do ketosis the right way with meat, then no, you don't have to cycle it like I used to say in my older videos. Now, bringing up older videos, I've taken down about 8 videos where I talked about this ratio of fat versus protein plus carbs. And that was taught to us by the Mayo Clinic, and the Charlie Foundation still uses that. And that ratio is good for kids with epilepsy. It's very high fat. And it's good short term for some people. But I've taken those down because people are getting confused by that. So, and I still have patients now, they come to me from long distances. They come to my office and they say, I'm doing a 2-to-1 ratio or 3-to-1 ratio. And I'm like, okay, that's fine now. But now we're going to change it. Once you're in ketosis, we're going to change it back. Lower fat, increase the protein. One of the seminar's leaders said that, quote, we all know that the ketogenic diet causes fatty liver. Okay, so we have to just stop that thought right now. The ketogenic diet is the best thing for a fatty liver. So when you're in ketosis, your fat intake is down, your body starts burning this fat out of here. It comes out of here first. And it comes off your belly and off your thighs and off your butt later. So it's cleaning up your pancreas and your liver and around your heart and intestines. That fat leaves first. Now, 2 tools that I use still all the time. Number 1, Chronometer. That's the diet app where you put your food in and it gives you the macronutrients, the fat, protein, and carbs in grams. I don't care about percentages. I want to know the grams. It also gives you grams of fiber per day. You put those 4 macronutrients into the website that's ptoer.com. It stands for protein to energyratio.com from Dr. Ted Naiman. I'm using this all the time. I've made some videos about this. But I use these 2 internet tools to help people understand what to do with their diet. Now, ptoer.com, it's not about ketosis, right? They show you like fat gain versus fat loss. And but I just tell my patients, look, if you're trying to get into ketosis, keep your carbs below 20. Boom, that's done. It's super easy. Those are the 2 best internet tools that I found for controlling your diet and understanding what to do with your diet. So I want to talk a little bit more about the carnivore diet. I'm probably 90% carnivore, and I talk to people who are more carnivore than me, patients of mine, and the changes that they get. So we're talking physical strength, we're talking reduction, an actual like they feel slimmer here in their waist. It gets sucked in. And then a poise and a calmness and a strength and a stature, and what's the term? Posture that has not been experienced before. It's a settling feeling. It's energetic. It's strength. It's strong. It's all these combined. So when Weston A. Price traveled the world in the 1930s and he looked at 134 indigenous tribes, he talked about this all the time. He talked about like the moral fabric of the culture of the tribe was very strong. They had no jails, and they had peace and calm amongst the tribe. Now, there were tribes that fight each other, but in his travels, he compared these indigenous tribes versus modern society. And he said that the diet helps these people work well with one another. So when you look at our culture today, and you look at the insanity and the violence and the crime and the inability to communicate with somebody else sanely, there is some factors related to the diet in there. And just look at what people are eating and how they drive and whether or not they pay attention. And look at the students who do well versus the students that don't. And what are they eating? And these are all like broad generalities. So, but if your brain's not, doing well, your body's probably not doing well either. Feed your body, feed your muscles, make your brain work better. And what's the best food for your muscles, the biggest organ in your body, your muscles? It's red meat. And I've gone on and on about how important it is to eat red meat. It is the best superfood on the planet, better than kale and avocados and spinach and whatever other green things you can come up with. Red meat is the superfood. It's red because it has heme iron in it, also known as myoglobin, and that feeds your muscles. It provides iron and oxygen to your muscles, and it makes your brain work better too. So I've seen a number of people whose brain function is much improved. And I even have an Alzheimer's patient 2 months ago. I had her touch her fingers together like this, and she couldn't do it. And then I said to her and her husband, okay, red meat every day. They came back last week, and they're eating 4 steaks a week. And I told her to do this, and she went like this. And she touched her fingers. And I had her do some other things, and her husband was blown away by how much better she was doing in 2 months on lots of red meat. But it's not even a lot. It's only 4 steaks a week. So I told them both, 2 servings of red meat per day. Eat as much as you possibly can. And we'll see how much better her brain gets on red meat. Okay, I want to do this update on ketosis with new information that's even greater information than what I knew 9 months ago. I got sucked into Twitter 1 year ago. I've been learning a lot. I think Twitter is a little bit of a hellhole with the attackers, the trolls, but yet at the same time, it's like Twitter University. And I'm following some really intelligent people who have been around the block with nutrition and ketosis and food, et cetera, et cetera. And as I learn from them, I apply it to myself and to my patients. So the things that I've said in this video, I say with total confidence because I see it to be true. And of course, I know the research back and forth, and I know what research is valid and invalid. I can figure that kind of stuff out too. And so if you're interested in being a patient of the office, of my office, then this video is very important because if we decide that ketosis is good for you, then these are the steps it takes to get there, to do like baby steps. Or you could just eat meat and tackle whatever symptoms come about from that, maybe constipation or muscle cramps or something like that, or maybe some gallbladder discomfort. But we can help you, walk you through this and give you the steps, and then you can achieve better health, and you can achieve this brain power, this calm feeling, this muscular strength that I mentioned earlier in this video.